What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be an absolutely massive day as we have CPI coming out, and talk about some hypothetical moves that could be playing out for SPY and many other tickers. But before I break anything down about what on earth is going on with CPI, how this may affect the markets, what you should be watching for, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 6 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so we had a very crazy day today, which is not what we were expecting. When it came to the way the market opened, we got this really nice bounce on SPY. We got this very, very beautiful bounce. I was talking about a potential bounce that was showing on the TA side. And it did happen. It just only happened during the pre-market. You can see SPY went all the way up to about the 450. Technicals were suggesting some bounce was coming. And unfortunately, this bounce did not last. We didn't see the market hold these high levels. We went all the way up to almost 451 in the morning. Then we came right back down. And then we ended up opening with a gap right here from the pre-market, which the market came down to fill. And then if 448 broke, right, we talked about this in the morning, we'd likely see a rug pull. And I was anticipating some downside in my morning video. I called out some downside to come in the morning, but it went a little bit lower than what I was expecting. And then we got this very monstrous bounce, which is really nice to see. So lots of volatility. SPY went down from the 444s all the way up to 449 in this crazy, crazy bounce right back up before getting one last rug pull at the very end of the day to close us. And the market was once again very uncertain about the concerns that are once again arising and being insinuated by the CPI report and the expectations. And with all that coming out, the market is a little bit uncertain. The market sold off with some fear about a potential high CPI. And there's a lot of economists coming out saying that this next CPI is not going to be the best. Now, we don't know for sure. We'll have to wait and see on it. But when it comes to the way the market moves, we have to throw technical analysis out the window in terms of what it's looking like right now. That just means that we can't just like look at one formation and assume it's going to play out for sure, because what matters the most is CPI, and the market will move depending on that. I want to be clear with you. It doesn't matter if you think that technicals look really bullish or really bearish. That does not matter. You have to be prepared for anything, because tomorrow is going to be a completely new day with lots of volatility. I'm going to break that down in just a few minutes. Just as a reminder, we have Walt Disney earnings coming out, or Disney in general. They're coming out right now at the time I'm recording this. We will talk about this tomorrow morning. Then also we have Alibaba tomorrow morning before the market opens. And that's about it for the time being. To add on to this, I just wanted to mention that we have initial jobless claims also coming out in the morning at the same time as CPI. It's not going to be that important. The most important thing is going to be CPI out of anything, and we want this to be as expected or lower. Right now, this is what the banks are projecting. Most banks want a 3.3 headline CPI. That's actually a little bit hotter than the 3% that we got in June. We want it to be somewhere around there. And then for the 12-month core CPI, we want it to be around 4.7%, a little bit lower than that of June. Could we get these numbers? We will have to wait and see. But here's the simple way of looking at this. I just want to remind you all that when you look at the gas prices, they did go up a little bit in July relative to June. So there's a good probability of energy bringing CPI itself up a little bit. I think it's very probable. But the question is to what degree, and that I'm not too sure about. CPI is a very manipulated number. We don't always know what's going to happen. And that's why it's important to be open-minded. So if we get, a CPI that's around like 3.3% or higher. I would say higher than 3.3%, maybe like 3.4% plus. And then the core is also like 4.8% or higher. The stock market is going to get a rug pull, and we're going to see some downside. So make sure you're ready for that in case we get a hot CPI and core CPI. But if core and CPI are both lower than expected, if core is like, once again, lower than expected and it's like 4.6% or lower, and then CPI itself is like 3.2% or lower, the market's going to get a nice uptrend. And if everything is like mixed, it really depends on which one is more significant, which is the bigger beat, and etc. So it could go either way, and that's why it's always important to be open-minded. Okay, so it all depends on these numbers. The market could go up or down based off that. Here is the setup on SPY. Basically, here are the two possibilities that are very, very probable. If not, we could get like a bigger like gap down, if anything, depending on the possibilities. But basically, we have this falling wedge on SPY right now. If we get a good CPI, if everything's lower than expected, right, we could get a gap up and a nice bounce tomorrow and a nice push up. This is the bullish case if we get some good numbers. Do I know if that's going to happen? The answer is no. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? If we get some bad numbers or like coming kind of like decent numbers, we could maintain this like falling wedge and then get a breakout later. That's another possibility. And if we get some bad numbers, we could see SPY just get rug pulled and actually break even lower than this, break much lower and come down to like 442, which just so happens to be where our gap is. So we could see SPY reach 440 to 442 before trying to get some kind of bounce. And that's going to be very probable for now. And for now, which one do I think is more likely? The best thing I would say is it really depends on what we see. And I can't really predict this, guys. To be honest with you, I don't want to predict anything. I don't know what's going to happen. It would just be a guess at this point because CPI is just calculated in so many different ways. It's changed recently compared to like last year, and they weight different things like housing a lot more than before. So we'll have to wait and see. If we're bullish, if we get a really, really great CPI, okay, if everything is really awesome, we could see this thing gap up to like 450 and start running. If we end up gapping down and dropping, that would be because we likely have a hot CPI. So a gap up and pop will take this thing above 450 into like 452 plus. If we get the rug pull, we may gap down to 444 and then come all the way down to 440. Now, what if we have a mixed reports? There's another possibility of us potentially gapping up to like 450, then getting a rug pull afterwards. Kind of like today, how we gapped up to like 450 and came down. Something like that could happen tomorrow again if CPI is mixed and not that great, kind of like in the middle. Uh, the same thing could happen vice versa. It could gap down tomorrow morning, so like 442 and then bounce. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, the thing that's worth noting is we do have a gap down at 442 that's unfilled on the daily chart. The chart's looking a little bit more bearish, so there is a possibility that we like gap down here and then we get a reversal. I honestly don't know what's going to happen, to be honest with you. I don't have any way of knowing, so you have to be prepared for anything. For Tesla, good CPI numbers are going to bring Tesla all the way up, in my opinion, to 250. And if it breaks that, we're going to be watching 255 plus. That's a real possibility. If we get some bad numbers, Tesla could get a rug pull and fill this gap all the way down to about into the 230s. We could see Tesla hit 235 very soon, which is where we have this gap, and it's going to see some major downside. Now, it looks weak on the daily chart. The odds do favor downside, but there are no guarantees. It could always go either way depending on what happens with CPI. So always be open-minded. To add on to this, let me just mention that Aapl is going to be another big one to watch. If we get some bullish CPI numbers, we could see Aapl make its way up to about 182 plus. If we get some bad numbers, I'm going to be watching this thing come all the way down to fill this gap down here around this 175 area, and it could drop a little bit lower than that. So you have to be in the middle. You have to be open-minded. Which way will it go? I can't really predict that. We'll have to wait and see. But the triple Q is the same thing. Good numbers could help this thing go all the way up to 375, and bad numbers will take this thing down not just to 365, maybe all the way down to about 360, if not 357. That's where we had this previous support down here. So you have to be prepared for anything. That's really all I can say about most of these stocks. For Nvda, if we get a really good CPI, we can get a really nice bounce off our 50 EMA. And Nvidia could make its way all the way back up to about 440. If we get a bad CPI, then Nvidia is going to be well on its way down to potentially like 413 or so. So we have to be very careful with that. For Microsoft, a good CPI could push this thing up to this resistance right here at 330. A bad CPI, it's going to take it all the way down here to fill this gap to like 314. That looks a little bit more likely looking at the setup, but no guarantees, no promises. I can't predict anything about it or like CPI with high certainty. Same thing with AMD. A bad CPI is going to bring this thing down below 107 to potentially like 105 or so. Good one will probably fill the gap up to about 116. Still in the middle. We will have to wait and see. For Netflix, it has this big gap all the way up to about 476 that's unfilled. I don't really see it going that high, but I could see it come very close to this like gap resistance if we start uptrending more and we get a really nice bounce off CPI. It is a possibility of it getting to about 440 plus to potentially this 44 just under like 447. That's another possibility too for the bulls. The bears, however, if they take control after CPI, we're going to be watching 420, then 411 below that. For something else, such as the dollar index, I mean, if the market gets a rug pull, this thing has the potential to break above 103 and at least test 103. If the opposite happens, we're going to be watching for it to break down to 102. It's basically stuck in the middle between support and resistance as it's at 102.5. Alibaba has earnings for tomorrow. If we get some good earnings, I mean, if you have this gap up here around 100, that's a possibility. If not, there's also this setup that could take it down to this target of about this 90 area. And if that fails us, there's another gap down here at 83. Who knows which way Alibaba will go? We'll have to wait for earnings and CPI. For Google, if we're bullish after CPI, we're going to be watching this thing fill this gap up here around this 133 area. If we're bearish, we're going to come all the way down to some very, very low level below 127. There's this big gap down to 123. I mean, if there's a really, really big drop, we have to be very careful. For Amazon, we're going to be watching resistance at 140. If that breaks, 143 is a possibility. If we get some bad numbers, 133, this level right here, previous resistance, which is going to become support around this 133.5 area, is going to be tested most likely if we get a bad number. It looks like it may test this from a technical standpoint, but like I said before, technicals are only part of the solution. There's still so much more you have to look at. Meta is looking relatively weak right now, very, very weak, continuing to downtrend. If we get a big rug pull, if we get a very bad CPI number, we can see this thing come down to about 290. A really, really big drop is what it's going to need. If we get some really good numbers, it could try to push its way up to about this 318 to 320 area. Again, it could make a very, very nice bounce, but I'm honestly not going to promise anything. We have this like bearish looking divergence that form has been downtrending since. We'll have to wait and see on that. And with that said, guys, I know it's not what you probably want me to say, but the market could go either way this time around, and I just can't predict what's going to happen with CPI and etc. So just wait and see, do what you have to do. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. CPI is going to be very fun to play. Market to the moon as the long term is still very bright, and peace out.